Hello and welcome to the Responsive Family Sleep Podcast. I'm your host, Kim Hawley, holistic sleep coach, lactation consultant, peaceful parenting educator, and mom. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by all the conflicting sleep info, frustrated with sleep information that just plain felt wrong, or searched desperately for a truly gentle and responsive sleep approach, then you are in the right place. In each episode, we'll be answering your most pressing baby and toddler sleep questions, busting those sleep myths, and helping you understand truly developmental, biologically normal baby and toddler sleep, plus encouraging you to trust your intuition along the way. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. This week, I want to share some thoughts with you as both a sleep coach, but also as a mom of big kids, looking back on things that I see so many parents stressing about, things I find parents receive information that can be anxiety producing, that can create that stress, that creates a lot of guilt, and things that really came from my own parenting experience, but I see them so much over and over and over again in the families that I support. So I thought this might be helpful. Kind of thinking on 5 sort of truths that I can kind of validate now looking back, but were definitely true for me, as in those early years. So first thing for me was to never feel guilty for leaning into all the snuggles, right? Whether that's bed sharing, contact napping, occasional baby wearing napping, scooping your little up as much as you want, really leaning into those snuggles. And there's so much awful messaging out there about spoiling babies and independence and all that, but it's all BS, right? But the pressure isn't like that parents experience that's too much. I never, ever, ever regret all the contact sleep that I did. Now, I want to be clear, that does not mean in every moment that it was perfect, right? There were moments I was touched out. There were moments that really wasn't what I wanted to be doing. But in a broader sense, I never regretted leaning into that and, how healing it was for me as a parent, but also, the nurturing and safety it created for them and how we made it, how we made it work. So I love the baby snuggles. I miss the baby snuggles, I'll be honest. But I've never regretted that, even in the moments where I wanted to be doing something else. And I think my second one goes along with that, right? Is don't ever regret, and I do not regret, making time for myself. And I tend to see parents sometimes who lean really hard into the contact sleep and the being very present and the responsive, sort of more attachment style parenting sometimes forget about this one, right? You have to have time for yourself. It's really important so you can show up in the ways that you want, right? But the ways that looks might look different when you are 2 months postpartum, when you have a 4-month-old, when you have a 9-month-old, when you have a toddler. And so for me, I think it's, was really, really important that it balanced out those times where I actually didn't want to be doing a contact nap. I was kind of touched out. I had that buffer of also really highly prioritizing doing things that were important for my self-care. And so most of the time, I loved my contact snuggles, right? But I had that buffer of also really prioritizing carving out some time for me, some time that was not child-focused. And that's really important. And I see that with my clients also, that time for them is really protective of their ability to show up and parent and lean into these sort of more higher touch needs, higher needs, higher sensitivity kiddos. I think we forget that part a lot. Another thing that I actually didn't realize so well into my parenting journey is that every parent has phases and things that are hard for them. And that differs from parent to parent and child to child. And it's really, really easy for you not to see another parent's hard and only to focus on what they have that is easier than your hard. And I don't mean this to diminish anyone's hard or take away from anyone's easy or anything like that. But for me, once I realized that, like, okay, my hard might be sleep, someone else's hard might be feeding, right? But our brains don't always balance that out. Like, we latch on to the things that sort of are more relevant to us. So if you're surrounded by everyone who has easy sleepers and you have a really hard sleepers, your brain might not really be helping you see that something else is really hard for them. Or you might not be there yet, right? Like, I found with both my kiddos that baby parenting was so much easier with toddler parenting. But I also found toddler parenting so much harder with my son than my daughter for various reasons. I have a very good friend who had a highly, highly sensitive kiddo around sleep, but potty learning for them was like the easiest thing ever. And it was like just a little bit of tipping the scales back, right? You know, like so much effort and love went into supporting her little sleep. And then we had easy potty learning. And it was like, oh, yay, thank you, karma. Thank you, universe, for balancing it out. So I just think that perspective can be helpful when we remember we don't know everyone's hard. The next thing that I learned as a parent and really, really, really encourage with my clients, it is okay and healthy to read lots of differing opinions when you're trying to figure out what is out there, what are people saying, and what resonates with me, right? But once you know what resonates with you, continuing to read things that cause you stress, are highly contradictory, make you feel like a bad parent, is actually not helpful. And so, you know, obviously parents seeking my support out don't want to sleep train. And so if they are getting stressed and overwhelmed by the information they are consuming, we will do a bit of a triage on what they're reading, right? What are good accounts? Because I don't ever want a parent just to listen to me, right? Like, that is not helpful. There are so many great professionals out there. So many great accounts, so much great stuff, but it gets buried because it is not the majority. And so all we'll do is okay, if you are resonating with a, attachment-based, neuroscience-informed, developmentally informed, whatever you want to call it, approach, then stop following sleep trainers, even sleep trainers in disguise, right? So we'll beef up the following and the reading of good aligned accounts and stop following ones that are making you feel bad, right? Because we don't owe everybody our attention, and you can really do a number on your mental health if you keep consuming content and information that makes you feel like you're doing a bad job. And this is not just about sleep, right? This is true across so many areas of our life, like the self-discipline to say, I do not need to read this. I do not owe you my emotional and mental space. It can really, really help, right? Kind of stop those anxiety spirals, stress spirals, self-doubt. It can make you feel so much more positive about your own experience. And then my last thing is around partner involvement and sort of reflecting back on my experience, but also the broader experience that I see in the families that I work with, which is don't gatekeep your partner's involvement and collaboratively come up with things that work for both of you. Now, I'm going to dive into this one a bit more, but first a little bit of a story. When I was pregnant with my oldest, I worked as a public health analyst on a federal program all around improving birth outcomes and reducing infant mortality. I think I may have mentioned this on the podcast before if you listened to a lot of the episodes, but maybe not. I don't know. Anyway, I do not advise the type of work when you're pregnant for the first time. Ooh, it's stressful. But I happened to take a webinar on fatherhood involvement, and they talked a good bit about competency and gatekeeping and things like that. And I had never thought about it that way. And I am really glad that I took that continuing ed webinar because it really did inform the way that I approached early parenting with my first. And what I mean here is we as the birthing parent, as the mom, as the more nurturer, stereotypically speaking, and as the one that often has longer leave and more hands-on time with baby, including, especially if you're nursing, but even if you're not nursing, still more hands-on time with baby, we tend to be the expert. And we can get in the way unintentionally, right, of our partners being involved. And so, because they do it wrong, we don't like the way they do it, it's taking longer, it's making it harder for us, all sorts of reasons. That's a whole episode in and of itself. But we also can feel pressured to do things so that our partner can do it, right? Give a bottle so that they can do it. And I'm not hating on giving a bottle. If that is what you want to do, that's wonderful. But there's often pressure without thinking about, is this actually making everyone's life easier? Is this the way, the other parent needs to bond? Do we want to do this? So what I'm saying here is you need to prioritize both parents being involved with baby care. It is how we form strong bonds, and it is how we learn, and it is how we get the flexibility for everything not to fall on one parent. And what that looks like needs to be collaboratively decided, rather than someone saying this is how it has to look. So again, story time. I didn't really like pumping. So had people been like, you need to give your baby a bottle once a day and your husband needs to do it so that he can bond with the baby, that would have made my life hard, and I would not have been a very happy person, right? Somebody else might actually love that. That might be wonderful for them. They get a break. Their partner really enjoys feeding. Wonderful, right? So it's not about, is this a right or wrong thing? It's about, how does it feel to both parents involved? So in our family, my husband did bath time, and story time, and he baby wore a lot. So did I. We both baby wore a lot. So there were lots of ways that, really intentionally created that space, but not in a way that made it harder for me. And since I was nursing, I got the call, and then, my husband gave bottles occasionally. It's not like he never did, but it wasn't a regular part of our day-to-day balancing. And that was because I really didn't want to. But had I really wanted to, right, that could have been an option. So the collaboration there on finding something that works for both of you can be really, really helpful. So I hope this was a helpful episode. It's such an interesting perspective now that my kids are older, and yet really being in the thick of it with the families I'm supporting, because I do quite a bit of longer, deeper, support. So I'm walking alongside the families that I work with for a while, right? So I'm really kind of more in the thick of it with them. And I remember those days. I remember the pressures, I remember the stress and the guilt and the worry, and then being there with them. But also, like I said, looking back now, that I hope this gives you some things to think about and reflect and see in what ways it might help you make a little bit more ease, a little bit more leaning into your instincts, a little bit more charting your own path and really taking care of yourself, meeting your little needs, working together as a team to navigate those kind of early wild years when it comes to sleep. Thank you for joining me today. I hope this episode left you feeling more informed, confident, and encouraged on your sleep journey. And just a reminder before you go that nothing in this episode is individualized to your specific sleep situation, nor is it to be taken as medical advice. Take what resonates, ignore what doesn't, and check with your healthcare provider about any medical concerns. Take a moment to subscribe to this podcast so that you'll never miss an episode. And take a moment to rate, review, or share an episode you love on social media. All of that helps parents just like you find me, this podcast, and this gentle and responsive sleep information. I'll see you next time.